If you haven't heard a lightning talk before, let me tell you, they're brilliant. Each speaker has prepared 20 visual slides that will be shown for 21 seconds each on an automatic timer. Neither the speaker nor I have control to stop those slides. So once they're started, they're started. I'll introduce the speakers one at a time, and then they'll present their lightning talk. Okay, so first of all, we've got Madeline Goodall, the Heritage Coordinator at Humanists UK. This year, Humanists UK is celebrating its 125th anniversary. And since 2019, Madeline has been researching the history and influence of the organization and its members since its founding in 1896 as the Union of Ethical Societies, and the building the Humanist Heritage website to share this little-known heritage. Madeline is also Humanists UK's Wikimedian in residence, advocating for the improvement and diversification of Wikipedia. She's going to be telling us a story about an app that they've created during the lockdown. Over to you, Madeline.
So I'm going to talk about a collaboration between Humanists UK, a charity representing the non-religious, 125 years old this year, and Go Jauntly, which is an app that focuses on making walking accessible and enjoyable, particularly for city dwellers. This happened as part of the Humanist Heritage project, which was launched in 2019. As Bav mentioned. So we were founded in 1896 as the Union of Ethical Societies, groups of individuals who sought to live good lives without reference to ideas of God or an afterlife. And the focus was on deed, not creed. So unsurprisingly, perhaps, members were very active in a wide range of reforms. Among the project's key discoveries were many hidden women and other underrepresented histories. We uncovered formerly overlooked individuals who were actually founding figures of the organisation, like school teacher and honorary secretary Nellie Freeman, suffragist Lily Boileau, socialist feminist Zona Valence, and tireless divorce law campaigner Maysean Tiedemann. The project was always intended to have a geographical emphasis, challenging the idea that a lack of churches, temples, or places of worship means a dearth of physical heritage for the non-religious. This is the map from the website as it is today, but this was a long way from being launched last year. So a key part of sharing these places and spaces ahead of website launch was always a plan for lead walks taking place throughout 2020 and 2021, including led by experts like the brilliant David Rosenberg, whose No Gods, No Masters walk on Bloomsbury's radical history takes in some of these sites. This is Conway Hall pictured here. But as everyone knows, 2020 brought 2 national lockdowns and a pivot from in-person events to alternative models of sharing research and learning and working together. So in light of this, our planned collaboration with Go Jauntly took on a new significance, allowing us to build an in-app walk, which could be self-led and didn't even require people to physically walk it until it would be safe. Much like a sonnet or indeed a lightning talk, the format requires the shepherding of your thoughts and information. The route of the walk and the contents have to work together in a logical, engaging way. How do you, for example, convey the many crossovers between members of the ethical societies and various aspects of social reform if you haven't explained what an ethical society is? Because of its rich humanist and radical history, Bloomsbury, kind of a natural choice for the first in-app walk. It's the home of UCL, founded as a secular alternative to Oxford and Cambridge, and Conway Hall, home of the Humanist Library today. It also has plaques for, among others, the Women's Freedom League, Virginia Woolf, social reformer and secularist George Jacob Holyoake, and Indian social reformer Ramahan Roy, and they've all disappeared now. We actually launched the Humanist Bloomsbury tour at the exact moment of the second national lockdown, November 2020, so it was important to emphasise that the walk could be previewed, saved and walked later. We hope to bring new resonance to familiar streets and sites for local people, especially with lockdown walks being many people's only daily exercise. So here's the map overview and some opening views of the walk. This combination of map, image and read more panels lent itself really well to the sheer amount of history contained in Bloomsbury streets. You can preview the steps before the walk, refer to them during and revisit them afterwards. And it enabled us to share findings which might otherwise be deemed quite niche. So relating to the history of humanism and Humanists UK, here are 2, again, suffragists and members formerly of Humanists UK as it was. It allowed us, importantly, to emphasise the physical closeness and surprising connections between various Knowledge Quarter organisations. It also meant we could use items from the collections of those organisations to add visual richness to the walk, like the remarkable Creative Commons licensed and public domain images in the Welcome collection, and that Bentham engraving was one of theirs. And it also allowed us to give glimpses into our own archive, which is held by the Bishopsgate Institute. This is from the George Jacob Holyoake archive, in fact, at the Bishopsgate, his 1842 arrest warrant for blasphemy. And where a single site contained echoes across time, it meant we could highlight connections and crossovers that took place on those sites. So, for example, Brunswick Square, which links the eloquent agnostics Leslie and Julia Stephen, their daughter Virginia Woolf, and the writer and civil rights activist E.M. Forster. You can also look inside buildings, which are no longer there, or which are still there, but used for the same purpose, such as the Church of Humanity, now on Rugby Street. The religion of humanity was a secular religion invented by Auguste Comte to celebrate the achievements of humankind rather than worship a supernatural being. And in this case, it allowed us to introduce Harriet Martineau, who translated Comte's works into English, Darwin's bulldog, as he was known, T.H. Huxley, who hated positivism, George Eliot, who was very influenced by it, and Rabindranath Tagore and John Stuart Mill, who were both insightful critics and adapters of positivist ideas. So as well as helping to demonstrate the physical proximity of the Knowledge Quarter's institutions, it also allowed us to situate them within a wider community and network of knowledge and change, which was both historical and contemporary. Go Jauntly have also incorporated wellbeing research into the app, following a partnership of theirs with the Nature Connectedness Research Group at the University of Derby. This had proved the beneficial impact of noticing urban nature on mental health. So Nature Notes, encouraging just this, was introduced as a feature, and perhaps takes on even more significance in the wake of the pandemic and the importance of being able to be outside safely. And we are planning to go outside of the Knowledge Quarter. We're currently finishing off a Manchester walk with Go Jauntly, and we'll also produce equivalents for various cities and towns across the UK, where we'll draw on regionally specific history and local museum and archive collections. For many Knowledge Quarter organisations, this could be a means of similarly sharing research, showing off collections, building partnerships, not just with each other, but also with the local community. Could be explored in terms of how members of the community could be engaged in the process of researching, creating and trialling walks themselves, emphasising collaboration, connection, common histories and learning from each other, perhaps empowering people to tell their own stories and share their own personal geographies. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Madeline. Our next lightning talk is by Matthew Barbar, who is a consultant for research and data visualization for the Kitab team at the Aga Khan University. Matthew recently completed his doctorate in medieval Islamic history at the University of Edinburgh on the subject of history writing in Egypt in the medieval period. He works with the Kitab team at the Aga Khan University. In particular, Matthew works with the team to help develop visualizations for their multiple complex data sets. He's interested in digital reading environments and the way that they can be used to improve the accessibility of primary sources and historical research. He's going to be sharing a story of some of the work that they've been doing recently. Over to you, Matthew.
Thank you. So thank you for allowing us to speak at the conference today. I'm going to talk to you today about the Kitab team. We work in the digital humanities, mostly with medieval texts written in Arabic. And our main aim is to use digital methods to understand medieval Arabic book history. The work discussed here, though, is not just that of the team, not just that of mine, it's the team. And we're a combination of historians and a technical team, including computer scientists specializing in natural language processing. Together, we're working to improve digital methods, create a digital corpus, and develop new ways of understanding data, such as through visualization. And I'm a historian working with the team on problems of visualization. Now, first to start with a definition, digital humanities can encompass many things. On the whole, we work on reading texts in new ways using digital techniques. Digital techniques help us zoom out and contextualize our reading. So we are actually reading the text, but we're also zooming out and looking at them in context. to allow us to see text in ways that we otherwise couldn't. But today I want to show you how we could use digital humanities to disseminate our text, especially outside of the academic realm. And one of the main things we research is text reuse. Pre-modern texts share lots of material. Authors often commonly borrow and adapt from their predecessors, and so it's essential to understand text reuse if we're going to understand how Arabic books were written. We use an algorithm called passing, which compares every single text in our corpus to every other text in our corpus and identifies passages that are similar between those texts. For each of those texts, it creates a file listing those passages and their locations. Around our current corpus produces 1.5 million such files, and the largest file has over 31,000 rows. That's over 31,000 instances of reuse. For a medievalist, this is big data, and it clearly indicates something important is going on with our tradition. It's, however, a lot of data to comprehend, and so we have different visualizations to try and understand it. Some visualizations let us see how passages are rearranged between texts. So in both of these visualizations, you can see the book being represented by a band with 0 meaning the start of the book, and the lines show how pieces of that book are reused in other books in the corpus. The data can also help us understand dissemination. In this visualization, we can see how different parts of one book, A Famous History by At-Tabari, are shared in a variety of different texts. Each color represents a different book, and so you can see how there are bands here. Different parts of At-Tabari's history is being reused by very specific historians. You might ask in the two visualizations I've just shown you, though, where did the text actually go? After all, the books are our objects of study, and the data that we produce is meaningless without the text themselves. And I believe that using interactive digital reading interfaces can help link this data directly back to the text that we study. And this will not only help researchers like me, but it will also help the public understand the text that we work with. In my experience, reading has moved little from the printed text in the digital realm. E-readers give us some sort of flexibility, so you can change the font size or the margin size, for example, but they offer very little in the realm of interactivity. You might be able to perform some searches or annotation, but there's very little on top of that. And I think we can do much more. Last year, in partnership with the Qatar National Library, the Kitab team built a prototype interactive digital reading environment. This linked our data directly with the text from which that data was derived. In this image, for example, we can see quotations from a specific text found through digital methods highlighted in grey in the texts. And it allowed us in particular to start seeing text reuse data alongside our texts. Here you can see two texts that are reusing material, two books that are reusing material side by side in the reader. And then on the right panel, we have the text that's being reused highlighted in green. Now, this is just a prototype, really, but I think we can do much, much more with this technology. In some ways, perhaps ironically, I think that reading digitally actually brings us closer to how our texts were originally written and read. For example, some of the text reuse identified by our algorithm would have been much more recognizable as quotation to the contemporaries who were reading the text, who often read these texts in groups or were taught these texts, as you can see in the image that I've put on the slide there. And this is now lost to us reading in our modern context, and the reader helps bring that back. But most importantly, I think the future of interactive digital reading is to help make texts more accessible. The text that Kitab works with are part of a living tradition that still means much to Arabic and non-Arabic speakers today. Modern book markets and libraries, especially the online library Shamila, are testament to the continued importance of those medieval texts. Digital humanities data could help make these often very complex texts much more accessible. For example, we could use text reuse data to show how different but less complex passages of text are shared between works and help people who are read the same passage but in a less complex form. And the utility is particularly visible when we look at methods that use natural language processing. By natural language processing, I mean techniques where a computer automatically identifies features within a text, often using machine learning to find in a way that could not be done possible manually. So finding lots and lots of things which we couldn't do through manual tagging. So it could be, for example, used to identify named entities like names of people or places. The difficulty is that most work in natural language processing has been done on modern Arabic. The Kitab team are working with computer scientists to improve the models to work for classical texts. And our tests have found that some of the modern models often do quite well for finding names in certain contexts, but then sometimes it splits names in half. And this is because it's used to seeing modern text, not classical text, where the rules of names are slightly different. Advances in these fields could really help our accessibility of text to the broader public. Imagine being able to provide links to Wikipedia for place names in a text that contains literally thousands of place names. or perhaps linking the names of people between different texts so that people can read about the same person in different contexts. These texts are primarily often read by people whose first language is not Arabic, or they're often used for teaching Arabic. And we could, in an interactive reader, provide language tools. The reader could highlight citations, for example. These are often long lists of names in Arabic text, and they're not very useful to a learner. Or we might imagine automatically getting synonyms for words, or even providing automatic simplification of a text. For complex texts like these, such features could broaden accessibility as well as be useful for research. This would allow hundreds of thousands of people access to an important literary heritage in a way never before possible. But to do this, we need to continue collaborating, improving methods and developing, crucially collaborating between historians and computer scientists in this endeavor. And Kitab is proud to be part of that process. If you have any questions, advice, or ideas based on what I've spoken to you about today, I'd love to hear from you. We love to collaborate, as I've just been saying, so please get in touch on the email on the slide. And if anything that I spoke about today has really interested you, I recommend that you visit our website, where we've got lots of blogs talking about the work that we've been doing over the last few years. Thank you for listening.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Matthew. Really interesting stuff there. Our third lightning talk is by Caroline Wilson, who's the Director of Inclusive Economy and Jobs at Islington Council. She has been with the council for nearly 3 years, leading its pioneering economic development programme. It focuses on jobs for local people and building wealth at a community level through its progressive business support, procurement, and asset management approaches. Previously, Caroline worked in Belfast City Council for over 15 years, where she led on major regeneration and business improvement programmes, brokering political and community deals, resulting in £150 million worth of investment in local neighbourhoods. Caroline, we're looking forward to your lightning talk. It'll start as soon as the slide changes. Over to you.
Cheers, Bob. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation this afternoon. I'm really pleased to speak on behalf of Islington. So Islington has a kind of world image as being kind of bright lights and a place of great wealth. We have 21,000 small businesses. We have world-class business clusters, Knowledge Quarter obviously being at the heart of that. We have some of the wealthiest people in the country, but we also have some deep, deep inequalities and extremes of rich and poor. In 2011, we did a fairness commission to really look at kind of what are the structural barriers in our community and society to really try to unpack some of those. And looking at things like land values, employment, child poverty, and so on. It won't surprise you to know that we have a great range of deprivation in the borough. And most of this is interestingly above the London average. So Finsbury Park there on the left-hand side has the highest level, and all but one have a higher level than the London average. And this has only got worse. Nearly 1/3 of children live in families where they're facing income deprivation. We're consistently one of the highest in the country, which is really surprising, as I did come from Belfast to find this out in a place like Islington. Also, you have 34% of older people who are also facing income deprivation, and this has impacts around fuel poverty and so on. All of these vulnerabilities were true before the pandemic. They're even truer now after the pandemic. And we have now highly qualified people who are unemployed in the borough, and this is making the queue longer for people who are looking for work in Islington. And we have particular sectors that have been hardest hit. And we really need to understand what we mean by build back better. And we don't mean same old, same old. We absolutely want to look at the precarious nature of our economy and how we can make sure that we can make it as secure and as resilient and sustainable as possible as we go into the future. So we think that means a radical approach to building back better. We think this is about tilting the playing field and not leveling the playing field. We really want to look at the issues around social justice and to really help those who need help the most in our communities. It's about looking at the foundations of our economy, people who work in transport, in hospitality, in the care sector, in retail, people who really kept our country moving wherever we face the crisis. Wealth locally is always built in partnerships, and we are looking around to see who the partnerships are that we can work with. And we very much are focusing on anchor institutions in Islington and really looking at how we together can build back better, because a lot of them are already doing really fantastic work. So what is an anchor institution then? Traditionally, they're large organisations, but in Islington, we're looking at a whole plethora of organisations, so large and small, private and public. They tend to have these 5 characteristics, but very focused on the local place. They are really place-based anchors who do a lot in our communities. Some of the thinking of this comes from the Democracy Collaborative, so you've heard from Sarah earlier, but people like Claes and Manchester have done amazing work, Preston, and I would really highly recommend the JRF Leeds case study, which really kind of understands what the different aspects of that anchor institution framework could be. We are saying that we have a new emerging framework, but it'll mean different things to different organisations, and it's not that we expect every organisation to contribute to all of the elements that we're looking at, but it's really about kind of setting out a common purpose and a common direction of travel for all of us in Islington. So firstly, as an employer, what are our big organisations and our smaller organisations doing in terms of being good employers? And how do they inspire the next generation? How do they make sure their jobs are accessible? And what are good jobs? Are they paying well? Are they recruiting locally? And one example of this is recently we've just announced that Islington has become a London living wage place, and we're the first borough north of the river to do that. And we're really proud of working with 17 organisations to really make this a reality for people in the borough. Next, we are looking, the second element of the anchor institution is really looking at us as purchasers. So the council in Islington, for instance, spends about 650 million with over 6,000 organisations. So is there a way that we can work with others to bend some of that spend to benefit local communities and local businesses? And are there things that we can do around the net zero agenda, for instance? Are there ways that we can use local suppliers? So recently we commissioned Outlandish, who are our affordable workspace cooperative in the north of the borough, to support local businesses who wanted to digitise their business. So small independent traders who really didn't know how to get online, and Outlandish were able to do a series of webinars and practical workshops with them. Thirdly, is around landlord. How, as a landlord, an anchor institution is operating in the borough. So are they making their places open and accessible? What are they doing in terms of zero carbon agenda? What social value are they bringing to communities? Are these places that communities feel welcome into? So one of the things that we've just set up recently and opened last week is with City University as a new affordable workspace on the Farringdon Road. This will look at social enterprises and really be a catalyst for small community businesses within the borough, making lots of new jobs and inspiring a new generation of social entrepreneurs. The final one is about being a leader as an anchor institution. So what's the culture and what are the behaviours of an anchor institution? What are they doing in regards really important matters like Black Lives Matters? What are they saying about net zero? And are there kind of influences that they can bring to bear within their networks as well? So for instance, one of the great projects that we worked on with the Institute of Physics was at a town centre level to inspire young people around stargazing. So we had hundreds of young people looking at the stars in Archway a couple of years ago now, before COVID obviously, and it was a fantastic event to really show how we could collectively work towards a fairer Islington. So all of this is about working collaboratively and finding the advantage of working together. We're doing lots of great things in isolation from each other. So how can we work together more closely to really build a fairer Islington after the pandemic? Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Caroline. That was absolutely brilliant, absolutely fascinating. And there's loads of that we can listen to and unpick later on. So thank you for your time, Caroline. Now, our final lightning talk. Sadly, Jane Widdiford couldn't be with us in person because of some commitment, but we recorded the session a little bit earlier. So Jane Widdiford is from Global Generation. She's the co-founder. She co-founded Global Generation in 2004. She has more than 25 years of experience in delivering environmental, arts and vocational training projects in New Zealand and in the UK. She managed a city farm for Framework Trust and developed an inner city forest in Auckland as a learning resource for the Department of Education, set up and ran the NVQ horticulture program for Camden Job Train, and coordinated Camden's environmental education network. She's also managed Rise Phoenix, a community arts organization that worked with children and young people in the war-torn areas of the Balkans, in Tanzania, and in London. Now, Global Generation manage the Story Garden, and I hope most of you have had a chance to visit the Story Garden. Certainly if you are residents of the Knowledge Quarter, then you should have seen it. It's the big garden that's between the British Library and the Francis Crick Institute. I urge you to go and visit. Jane's talk is called Voices of the Earth, Stories of Species on the Edge. And here's her talk.
Imagine you are sitting in a circle of 50 small oaks grown from the acorns of 7,000 oaks planted by Joseph Beuys in Germany. This is where our Voices of the Earth journey began, into the healing power of plants, in the heart of an oak forest in the middle of the Story Garden in King's Cross. The oaks silently spoke to us, encouraging us to go slow. They reminded us to create space for open-mindedness, a space beyond barriers and prejudice. Mothers brought stories handed down through generations, and young people shared through words, drawing, movement, and music, their experience of spending time with plants. At the start of our journey, one of our young fellows, Maida, described how she was astonished at how little she and her contemporaries knew about the healing power of plants compared to people in the past or people in other parts of the world. At the end of the journey, Sion said, something like a daisy or big like an oak tree can have a much greater impact on us than I realized. The plants, stories, and songs that I encountered over the last year will be with me forever. Thanks to the British Library, young people explored books from hundreds of years ago. They commented on the care and detail in the way the plants were drawn. It was as if they were friends who could help us survive. In the Royal College of Physicians Garden, we learnt of folk remedies and scientific healings, and in their own ways, our participants found ways to marry the mythic and the scientific understandings of the world. In the early days of the pandemic, when the institutions closed their doors, our job was to help people come outdoors, away from their computers, into the wide green spaces and the tiny mysterious cracks in the pavements where dandelion, nettle, and fireweed find their way through. The project gave me a reason to leave my bedroom and go outside, said Cassie. Feeling the sun on my face, being in nature made me feel connected, even if I was physically distanced from others. Discussion and creative writing provided opportunities for people to find words for unfamiliar experiences and to share fears about the lived realities of each day. Our life has changed, waking up to something new that has never happened before, numbers to read every day on cases and deaths, and I'm scared. We sang songs and made teas and balms. We learnt about marigolds, orange and bright, who heal our skin and make us right. I learnt about the big story time has, said Samira. Time helps children sleep better, and time you healed the Mondini women's bodies who worked in the fields during the time of Italian fascism, And now you tell a story of happiness and community as we plant you in this garden. Maida explained how Theatre Complicité taught us to animate meanings and work together as a team. The bamboo took on a life of its own, helping us weave our way into the depths of the stories, illuminating different meanings for each of us. My heart skipped a beat when I heard from Dante, a fellow. He told of the story of Yggdrasil, the world tree that ties us all together. When the ash tree dies, this universal order will wither away. I was standing by the hardy tree in St. Pancras Gardens, now suffering from ash dieback. Eben explored sugarcane. It was a way of expressing his culture and his history. He connected his contributions to something that will make people think and appreciate and remember that Black lives do matter. We recorded audio pieces with Dan Balfour of Theatre Complicité. As Cassie said, I was fortunate enough to record the story of Yarrow and Achille, which is heavily linked to Greek mythology. It made me realize that all plants have stories behind their names. Hearing the audios made me feel proud of myself as a young person, proud of my generation who can still do positive things. I thought how far we've come as a group with our creative expression and our sharing of ideas. We produced a book that's now on sale on the British Library website and a photography exhibition, which you can come and see in the Story Garden. We now have images and words from young people about their experience of plants threaded all through the garden. Exchanging stories is an age-old way of communities coming together and making meaning. Storytelling is an imaginative endeavor that meets the needs of our time. Do come and visit us in the Story Garden, and we would love to hear how the stories of the earth are shaped and shared by you.
Fantastic. It's wonderful to hear the story from Jane. And if you haven't seen the book yet, I do urge you to go and get it. It's absolutely brilliant. A massive thank you to all of our Lightning Talk speakers from this session. So Madeline Goodall, Matthew Barber, Caroline Wilson, and Jane Rudiford.